Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Campus Convos. My name is Asher,
And my name is Zoe.
and today we're going to be talking about Hamilton the musical. Recently, Vanguard University took a big group of people to go see Hamilton the Broadway show in the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles, and it was awesome. It was my first experience ever with Hamilton.
Yeah, it was my first time seeing Hamilton live, but I've loved Hamilton since I first heard about it from the greatest Lin-Manuel Miranda, um, and I was hooked. But yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about that. So there's kind of a lot that goes into Hamilton, as you guys know if you've seen the show. If you haven't seen the show, it's about Alexander Hamilton, who's one of our founding fathers. Super important guy. He did a lot of stuff that the show talks about. And so today we're going to be going through, having just seen it myself, Zoe being a longtime lover, we're going to be talking about just a review. We're going to go through every song, talk about it, and then we're actually going to talk about the historical accuracy of Hamilton. And so that's kind of anytime a historical fiction or something based on true events actually comes up, it's always interesting to look at how true it is to real life. So that's going to be kind of our role here, just talking about historical accuracy of Hamilton and just doing a little review of it. So we're going to start out actually just with Act One, Song One. It's called Alexander Hamilton, really sets the scene.
What a shock.
And this song introduces Hamilton's life from his troubled childhood in the Caribbean to his arrival in New York.
Yeah, I think the song, basically the Alexander Hamilton, the very first song, is basically, if you pay attention, is the whole overview of the whole entire play and what's it gonna be. So it starts off literally, well, it's from the narrative of Aaron Burr, which, spoiler alert, Aaron Burr is the one that shot him, and he's basically just telling the whole overview of his life. So it basically, how it starts off, I think, is always so funny. It just captures such so well. It's just how does a bastard orphan son of a whore, you don't think that person can be the person he is today.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think that for me, having never seen it before, not knowing any of the characters other than who they were in history, I was a little lost at the beginning of this song because there was just so many characters coming up. If they said their names, they did it very briefly and quietly. So that was something for me where I was like, there's 10 people singing this song. I don't know who any of them are. Until it said Alexander Hamilton. I'm like, okay, well, at least I know who one person is. So that was my only criticism, but I think it started out well. I think that it set the scene. And then it moves into the song Aaron Burr, Sir.
Yeah.
And Zoe, would you like to give a little brief synopsis of that?
Yeah, so Aaron Burr, Sir is basically, well, you first meet him in the first song, but you get a little bit overview. So Hamilton meets Aaron Burr, and they discuss their ambitions and ideals, and basically they knew each other in New York, and throughout you just see how much of their pathway throughout the American Revolutionary War and then all their politics and then even all the relationships they had, I would say they had very much similarities, but they just acted out so differently, and which we'll talk about a little bit later because I have some input on a song that's my favorite.
I'm excited to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that with this too, as far as historiography, as well as the one before this, I think it's interesting to note that that song, Alexander Hamilton, outlines very clearly his origins and the idea that Alexander Hamilton was in real life an immigrant from the Caribbean that was an orphan and really was a self-made man. So I think that really does justice to the history of who he really was. Along with this song, the meeting of Aaron Burr and Hamilton, like Zoe said, Burr ends up killing Hamilton, but they have a long history before that.
Yeah.
And so this kind of sets it up well, and I think that kind of does justice to reality.
You see throughout the play, you see their friendship in the beginning, because actually Hamilton looks up to Burr, but then he realizes, why are you not doing anything? Why, if you stand for this, what do you, one of the songs, what are you waiting for, Burr? And Burr is I'm willing to wait for it, basically.
Yeah.
But, again, the next song is, my shot, and Hamilton's I'm gonna take my shot every chance I get. That's the difference between Aaron Burr and Hamilton.
Yeah, this song was really the only one I knew somewhat before I went to see it, because it was everyone knows this song. It's on everything.
Yeah.
For years, it's been the top of the charts for Broadway songs. So this one was interesting. It was cool to see it live. I thought hearing it live, I actually understood more of context and how it was just about him not wanting to miss his shot and really doing anything to get success. And so I think that was really an interesting part of it, where I really enjoyed kind of seeing it from more of a narrative perspective of his determination.
Yeah.
And I think that that is really reminiscent of real life. I mean, we saw it through his readings, through his writings, if we read them now, like how determined he was to make a name for himself. I think above all, obviously he believed in like federalism in America
Yeah.
and all of that, but he was there to make a name for himself. That's why he did what he did. That was his primary motivation from as far as we can tell. And I think this song really like shows that.
I think like my shot in the story of tonight, that's where we get introduced to Lafayette, Lawrence, and Mulligan, which are his great, like one of his great, like some of his greatest friends throughout the story. And I didn't know any of these three before Hamilton. Like, I only knew, like realistically, I only knew about Hamilton and I knew about Aaron Burr, and obviously like George Washington, like he's there.
Well, yeah, we all know George Washington.
If you guys don't know who George Washington, that's kind of crazy. But anyways, but those are like the three main characters that I actually knew of before this show, like this musical, and like all these songs came out. So I got to learn more about his friendships and how each of them played an interest in the Revolutionary War, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this whole idea, it's so interesting, and this gets like you get more into it when it's like I want to be in the room, like later songs. But like it's so crazy to think that these conversations that shape our everyday life 250 years later happen in just a bar somewhere over just drinks, people hanging out and talking about freedom and like what they want. And so it's something like this that just personifies that pursuit that I always find just so fascinating, this idea of all of these people coming together and just under the one goal of just making the world better and their country better. And so I loved this song. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really well done, super fun.
Yeah, I think another thing, like when it comes to my shot and the story of tonight, is like how you're like saying it's like the origin story, and like it was definitely after like Hamilton like came out on Disney Plus, like it definitely inspired so many people to be like I'm not throwing away my shot, and neither should you. Like you never know what might happen in the future, and like I think it's like honestly a good thing to live by, because I feel like our generation's like don't take things for granted. Like you're gonna miss out on so much, and I think that song and like how the four of them started, well plus five, but Aaron Burr, is just like they changed so much of history. So like we can do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that from as far as my research can tell me, maybe not in one single occurrence like is portrayed in the song, but their friendship was a thing. And they were good friends that all fought in the revolution. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Next in the... Zoe, can I get a pronunciation check on this?
The Scarlet.
Is it Skylar?
Skylar. The
Okay.
Skylar sisters.
It's spelled Schuyler,
Yep.
just for the record, if you can get my confusion there. But these wealthy Schuyler sisters, they included Hamilton's future wife, Eliza, and they're just exploring the like political excitement of New York. So this is kind of where we diverge from history a little bit, which we'll get into that a little bit later with a different song. But something like just off the bat of this is that in the musical, these women are portrayed as poor women that need to marry up to like make money, and they don't have any brothers. But in reality, they actually did have a few brothers. They came from a more wealthy family, so their situation wasn't really as dire as portrayed in this musical as a whole.
Wait, did you say the sisters were poor?
They were not poor.
Okay, yeah, sorry, they're poor. Yeah, so Angelica is the oldest, Eliza's the middle, and Peggy is the youngest, which we don't see that much of, like in the musical, we don't see that much of Peggy. She only is in only a couple songs, like she doesn't have that much, which we love Peggy. Sorry about that, girl. But it's mainly about Angelica and Eliza, because if in the story portrayed, like Eliza is the oldest, she's supposed to marry rich, because in the musical, like she says she has no sons, or like their father had no sons, which that is not correct. But no, the little backstory is like kind of like they put like a love triangle in between Hamilton, Eliza, and Angelica, as in there's a common they're saying that Hamilton and Angelica have more similarities with each other, that they would work out better than Eliza and Hamilton, which I always think about after the musical. I was like, I wonder what it would have been like if Angelica did steal Hamilton from her sister. Like she like in the musical, like she offered Hamilton to Eliza.
Mm-hmm.
If she didn't, like what would life be like if Angelica and Hamilton got together?
True. But what's crazy is from my research, I found that Hamilton didn't even meet Angelica until 5 years after him and Eliza had already been married.
Yeah.
So that's wild. So that was one of the liberties that Lin-Manuel Miranda really took, and especially when it starts to diverge from history. So that is it there. Next, we have Farmer Refuted.
Yeah.
And excuse me. So this is when Hamilton debates a loyalist, Samuel Seabury, and he opposes independence. So this is something that Hamilton actually did a lot in real life, and he wrote pamphlets against loyalists, including a pamphlet called Farmer Refuted, which is the name of this song. And a quote from this when referring to loyal arguments, it's a pretty long quote, but I think it really just gives the full picture of Hamilton's beliefs on this. It says, "The spirit that breathes through this is so rancorous, illiberal, and imperious. The argumentative part of it is so puerile and fallacious. The misrepresentations of facts so palpable and flagrant. The criticisms so illiterate, trifling, and absurd. The conceits so low, sterile, and splentic. And I would venture to pronounce it one of the most ludicrous performances which has been exhibited to public view during all the present controversy." I think that pretty much sums up how he felt about loyalists. And I just think it's so interesting. I think that song really did his views justice. I think that song was really fun. But I just think it's crazy just to dive into history and think, wow, he was really just coming at these people. And it was hard to read it without without having like a beat behind it, because after watching Hamilton, it's all like rap. So it's like you're reading Hamilton's like writings, and there's almost like a rhythm to it, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, totally. But I think during that whole piece it's very much of like how he's gonna present himself, and like definitely not backing down. He'll speak his mind. He's not afraid to. So, but no, I think that was just a funny part of the song. Like it's not. I don't think it's like a big number, but definitely just shows more of Hamilton's character.
Yeah, and I think that it does play a part in just showing how in real life aggressive he was towards people that didn't agree with him, which I think will come back later. Next, You'll Be Back, King George's debut. I'm not going to lie, King George, my favorite part of Hamilton, hands down.
That's so funny.
He was so good. I think that if you've never listened to it, the songs that King George is in are just incredible. They're so funny. It's so good. It's such like a different beat from the rest of the musical. It's so funny. I absolutely loved it.
This is a hot take. I don't like that song.
Really?
It actually kind of annoys me, but I think I'm just being petty because every time it comes on, I find myself singing it.
Yeah, I don't know. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so fun, so funny, and I think it was definitely like a breath of fresh air, because you're like every like song in this musical so far has just so many words. It's so fast, and this kind of breaks it up a little bit. It gives you some like breathing room in it, which I think is really nice.
I will say, if you're like watching this musical and you're going to see, I feel like whoever is King George III, whoever's playing him, has to be so good, because definitely takes part, and like how you're saying, like takes a break from all the rapping, like takes a break from everything. So it definitely doesn't matter in that you're portrayed. They are portraying King George III well, and because it's just a break from all the rapping and just the differences of music.
So for history, this song, it talks a lot about like, oh, well, yeah, they want to come back. But in real life, it wasn't as much as, oh, they'll want to come back, as much as, okay, this is an act of aggression. This is war. We're going to get them back.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it goes away a little bit. But the idea is still the same, but it was just a lot more aggressive in the actual thing. So that's You'll Be Back.
Ugh, Right Hand Man. I love Right Hand Man just because it obviously introduces our first president, George Washington. And it's a wonderful intro, and he's always looking for a right hand man, which I think it's crazy to think in the musical that Aaron Burr was trying to be that right hand man, but then Hamilton walked in the room, and George Washington let Aaron Burr go, and I actually don't remember how accurate that was. My memory's like kind of foggy, but then he asked Hamilton to be his right hand man, because Hamilton was the type of person that he didn't want to sit in a desk. He wanted to like show action, and at least he was portrayed that way. And I remember Washington was like in the song. He's like, "How come no one can get you on their staff?" Because he doesn't want to be like just sitting around not doing anything. He wants to be part of the action. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that this song really shows like the clash between personalities of George Washington and Hamilton. George Washington is more as calm, cool, collected, and like thinking through things, whereas Hamilton seemed a lot more hot-headed and just like wanting to rush into the action.
Yeah.
So I think that this just showed how their personalities really interacted well with each other, and I think it set up a lot for the rest of the play. I think it was super important. This song, I was a big fan of. George Washington was a really cool character.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, next into A Winter's Ball. This is where Hamilton and Burr discuss New York's social scene and potential love interests. So this one was super interesting just because kind of introduces some of like the love story that's going to unfold in this.
Yeah.
I want to say this is where Aaron Burr told him about the girl he likes, which is a general's wife, but I could be wrong. I want to say that's what happened though.
That is, I know what you're talking about now. That is later.
Okay, yeah. This one was when Hamilton and Eliza were getting together, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the Winter's Ball is basically the history of like it's showing like that's where he met Eliza. That's where Angelica introduced him to Eliza, and I'll leave you all to it, like kind of thing. And Eliza taking a step back, and then the next two songs are about Eliza's point of view of Hamilton and so the next two songs, Helpless and Satisfied. Helpless is Eliza's point of view of how her and Hamilton got together, and Satisfied is Angelica's point of view of how the whole Hamilton got together. But
yeah,
no.
and then it goes right into Helpless, which is them getting married, which is crazy.
Yeah, Eliza is so delulu for Hamilton.
Yeah, which
it's crazy.
It's crazy because this is him marrying up, because obviously she came from a very wealthy family.
Yeah.
He came from nothing, and so this is a big step in the right direction for Hamilton. So I know I've heard different commentaries that obviously, I hope they were in love too, but like regardless of love, this was a good move for Hamilton in the grand scheme of things when it comes to getting to be a bigger person, getting to be more power.
There was definitely some power moves of him marrying a Schuyler sister, whichever one that may have been, if it was like whatever sister it was, to get his name out there, and also their father too, which we're going to probably go more into that later. Just putting his name out there. And then Satisfied is Angelica's point of view and how she gave up Hamilton for her sister.
And here's where we really depart from history a little bit. Yeah, so obviously, like we talked about earlier, the whole love triangle thing is not historically accurate at all.
Yeah.
They didn't. Hamilton and Angelica didn't meet till quite a ways after that he was already married to Eliza. Obviously, that didn't really, being married didn't really affect Hamilton, as we'll talk about later. But still, there was nothing really there other than they seemed to have a cool like friendship, as well as there was some flirtatious letters. But that'll come up later in a different song when we talk about a comma, which it'll all make sense later. But that was interesting.
No, who doesn't love a good love story though?
True, I know. I think it was well done. I think that it was important, and I think that part, if you see the show, there's a cool thing where it goes back in time, and that part was really cool. I thought it was really well done.
Which, this Lin-Manuel Miranda, I don't understand how his brain works, that he could think about that the whole time.
Yeah.
Because like that, he's in compliment wise, he's a crazy man, and he can make things. So
yeah, it was well done. I was a little confused for like half a second. I was like, oh, we're back in time. I get it. So like there was like a second where not knowing the show at all, I was like, what? And then it all made sense. So I thought that was super interesting. Moving on, we have the reprise of the story of tonight, and that's when his friends react to his marriage. They tease him about settling down. But in reality, marriage did not deter Hamilton's ambitions. His friends were so important to him. And if anything, like we talked about, he married up, and that actually made him a more powerful man.
Yeah. And going back, this is the one song that you were talking about with Aaron Burr's love interest.
Oh, okay.
So he like comes into the room, and then like it's like basically it's kind of like a bachelor party kind of like the song wise is, and then just talking about marriage, and then Aaron Burr walks into the room and he shares he has a little love interest, but this love interest he cannot love, basically, because he's part of the other side.
And as it turns out, Aaron Burr did actually marry the wife of an English general, which is crazy that that actually happened.
Yep.
And that's what he kind of talks about in this play. So that's historically accurate.
Mm-hmm. And then it leads into one of my favorite songs, which I think this song made me, because Aaron Burr is supposed to be the villain of this story.
Mm-hmm.
But this song, the next song, Wait For It, changed my perspective on him and why I think Aaron Burr is one of my favorite characters. Because his range of singing it was absolutely incredible. But also just showed me a different perspective. Like, you don't always have to take your shot. You don't always have to take risks. You can be calculated, which is something that I don't do. I would say I'm the very opposite of Aaron Burr in how, like, how he just, like, calculates every step will move and, like, he just wants to wait for it. But something about the song is, like, just so, like, empowering to see, and, like, the difference between Burr and Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point in the musical where I was like, is Hamilton really the main character here? And so I think we're not there yet, but there is a point, I think, at the very end where I was like, oh, wait, I think Burr might not be wrong in this sense.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I feel like history demonizes Burr so much because he killed Hamilton. But at the end of the day, I think that there was a lot missing to the story. So I think that this kind of clears some things up.
Yeah.
Whether or not they took some liberties in the life and like in the storyline, I do think that there is more than meets the eye, especially when it comes to the history books.
Yeah. 100%.
Next, Stay Alive. I'm not gonna lie, this song was not super memorable to me. I know it's a war song. And obviously war happened in real life, so this one kind of breezed through for me. Wasn't my favorite thing in the world, wasn't bad, but
it's more of like, all I can remember is like, stay alive. That's
ooh, well done.
Oh, we might have to cut that out. But anyway, but that's what, like, actually, I think I agree. Is like, I know it's about war. I know it's like protecting and like come back home to your family and friends. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, all right. Next, into the 10 Duel Commandments. This one was crazy. All of the Duel songs I thought were so cool, especially because they were all like very similar.
Yes.
They were all just kind of reprise of each other, and I thought this being the first one kind of set the stage for all of that.
It makes me stressed out every time I listen to it.
Yeah, it's crazy because they're just counting the whole time.
Yeah.
And so this is when Lawrence is dueling Charles Lee, and Hamilton is the second against George Washington's wishes. So just a little historical background of this. Dueling was common among gentlemen of the era, though it was illegal. They talk about going over to New Jersey.
Yes.
And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, it must have been legal in New Jersey.
Yep.
But it actually wasn't legal in New Jersey. It was still illegal. It was just less harsh punishments. So there were still laws against it, but there just weren't as harsh punishments. Often people went completely unpunished for it.
Yeah.
Just because it was so common. And even if it wasn't common, if no one got hurt, which sometimes no one got hurt, and that was fine. But yeah, so kind of interesting just like how history went just with duels and how, I mean, people did duels all the way till way more recently than you would think. So I think it's cool, an interesting part of history.
No. And then obviously this song, the 10 Duel Commandments, like, is the first one, like, we see, like, oh, this is the song, this is how it plays out, and, like, they do it step by step, and then it's played 2 other times in Act 2. So, yeah.
All right, next we have Meet Me Inside. Washington reprimands Hamilton for risking himself for a duel. So like we talked about, like the differing personalities of Washington and Hamilton, I think that this is super interesting. Whether or not this actually happened, I'm not actually 100% sure.
I'm not sure
but that is something that would make sense. George Washington was often known for making sure that his army, and Hamilton, his Comte d'Armes, was very disciplined in trying to make sure that he was staying in line.
Yeah, I think, and at least in the musical sense, like, it was very represented, like, because Hamilton's father, he's an orphan. His father left him, his mother died. So George Washington, I think, is supposed to be representing also another father figure. in that sense, which Hamilton doesn't want a father figure. Like,
Yeah, and that's one where he calls him dad, like he calls
son.
him son all the time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that one was really interesting. I like that one a lot. I thought it was good.
Yeah. And then it leads into, which in the musical, Washington sends Hamilton home to go be with his wife. And then you find out that Eliza's pregnant. Which this is a song that would be enough. Which Eliza encourages Hamilton to be with his family and just stick with life, like being the life together, and just watch everyone. Like, don't miss the moments. Don't miss your family moments. Which I thought was kind of like, at least in my brain, I thought that was kind of ironic, because like he doesn't want to be, he wants to be in part of history, but he's not letting him be in his family's history, at least in the musical sense wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting though, but I think that's how, like, even in history, but also just like even today, like men and women that want to achieve greatness just can push themselves so hard in their like work or whatever they're doing. It can just like consume them, and they can neglect parts of their life, like their family. So I think that one made a lot of sense to me. I thought that was super interesting. Next, we have Guns and Ships, which is where Lafayette secures French support, shifting the war into America's favor. So this one is really good. This talks a lot about the French and how we had an alliance with the French. In real life, a lot of the French support came from Benjamin Franklin, but Lafayette obviously did help that, but definitely not as much as was shown throughout the musical, because at least the impression I got was that it was kind of all Lafayette. But Ben Franklin, I don't think Ben Franklin's in the musical, is he? In Hamilton?
No.
They might mention him a few times, but
I know they.
but yeah, I don't think he's in it. So I think that's interesting. And that was kind of, I guess he did spend most of the time in France, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But especially this era. So that's going to be Guns and Ships.
Yeah.
And then next is History Has Its Eyes on You.
Oh, this one kind of hit. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
In my sense, because it's in both Act 1 and Act 2, and it's different in my sense. Because Act 1, it's more of like history has eyes on you, and I don't think they realize how much history actually has eyes on you. And then in Act 2, like you see like the milestones that in every sense of like history has eyes on you, and like written into the textbooks type of way.
Yeah, I mean, and true, like this is just Washington continuing to emphasize the importance of duty, restraint, and just being disciplined. And so I think this is something that Hamilton like just kept trying to get drilled into him, but it just never really stuck, because he still continued to be impulsive and just doing really what he wanted. So that was interesting how it just kept being pushed into him, but it just never really stuck. Next we have Yorktown, which in real life was the war's final main battle and led to the British surrender. I thought this one was really good.
And the iconic line of "immigrants, we get the job done," which that is just so like, ugh. Which I was like, in my head I was like, wait, Alexander Hamilton's an immigrant? And Lafayette, because I didn't know that much about Lafayette. But I did my little own history about that, and they are.
Yeah, I mean, because you think about Lafayette came from France and Hamilton came from, like, the Caribbean. So they're both, neither of them born in America, came in and basically created the nation. So I think it's interesting. Something I also heard, which is a really fun fact, is that the line, "immigrants, we get the job done," originally there was no break in the music, but when they started performing it, people were clapping so loud after that line that they had to rewrite the music for a 2-bar pause, so then the applause could happen, and then people could still hear what happened after that. So I think that's so funny that happened from there.
Also in Yorktown, you see brought back. Lawrence comes back, and you also get more about Hercules Mulligan, which Hercules Mulligan was a spy on the inside on the British government, which I thought was really cool, because I think that portion of the song like brings back the friendship and the bond that they had, and how much of the 3 others, how much of an impact they had on the war, and all the impact in Hamilton's life and in history, which was really cool.
Yeah, and then next we have Dear Theodosia, which is Hamilton and Burr expressing love and hope for their children's future.
Yes, it's a duet between, well, first it's Burr, and then it's Hamilton, which Theodosia is the woman. Well, backtrack. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. Wait, you might need to fact check me on this, because I think I might be doing this from memory. But Theodosia is his wife, or the woman that he was having an affair with, and they also named their first daughter after her.
Oh, interesting.
I think. Because it's supposedly...
Yes, Theodosia is the wife of Aaron Burr that he took from the general of the British Army.
So, basically, Dear Theodosia is... Basically, they're writing their... like a letter, or just like... a little like memo to their children, because Hamilton's son also was born. So just cherished by their fathers, basically.
Great. And then last one of Act 1 is nonstop. Hamilton's relentless work ethic as he helped build the U.S. government. Yeah, and this is absolutely true. Hamilton played a key role, especially when it came to the Federalist Papers and the formation of the Constitution. So he wrote 51 of the 85 papers, and he was a big part of writing the Constitution along with Madison and John Jay. And that was just a huge part of it. So I think that was a super crazy thing that the show just kind of glanced over was, oh, by the way, the Constitution is a thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, 30 years are spread in the show, so it makes sense they have to glance over it. But just something so big and important, just being like, it happened, is kind of crazy to me. But I thought it was well done. It was a very good conclusion to Act 1. And by that time, I was like, I got to get up. It's been 2 hours. I got to go walk to the bathroom. So I was happy when it happened, but it was a great song to end on.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one that comes back, like, Hamilton's, like, always, like, he's writing. He continues to write. And the main theme, not main theme, but main focus on Hamilton, the musical, is, like, how do you write like you're running out of time? Because it's all the time. Which, fun fact, people said this to me. I was like, I heard this on another podcast, and I was like, that is so true. So if you focus a little more insight on the musical, everyone is rapping because, like, running out of time. Eliza's the only one that does not rap the whole entire time. She's actually singing.
Huh.
Like, even her sisters, like, they were rapping. But yeah,
wow.
Which I thought was really interesting. Which
symbolism.
Which I'll go more in depth with in Act 2 with Eliza.
All right, so that's wraps up Act 1. And now we're gonna get into Act 2. Act 1, we talked a lot about the history and all of that, and now we're gonna do the same for Act 2. So Act 2 opens up with What I Miss. So this is Jefferson returning from France and joining Washington's administration. I loved Jefferson. I thought he was so fun.
Definitely needs a lot of energy, and it was definitely just like a little hip song coming on.
And he was a double cast with Lafayette, if I believe correct, if I'm remembering right.
Yes. So we don't see we don't see Lawrence anymore. We don't see Lafayette anymore. And we don't see Hercules.
And Peggy.
We don't see Peggy anymore. So Lawrence actually died.
Sad.
He died. He
died in the rebellion in the South.
Yes.
Not trying to get African Americans to start in the army.
Yes.
Yes.
So he sadly died. I don't remember what song it was, but
yes, I remember that.
That happened. So Hercules and Lafayette are still alive. Well, actually, I don't know when they died, but anyways, but they are still mentioned in Act 2. They just don't get brought up on stage. But yeah, now enters in Thomas Jefferson and James Madison.
Yeah, and so that's Jefferson coming back, and obviously we can see that Hamilton and Jefferson don't love each other, and that just continues to develop throughout the play, or the musical. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes right into Cabinet Battle 1, which is Hamilton and Jefferson debate the national banks. And so I thought this one was really fun. I thought the whole rap battle idea was really cool. Jefferson dropped the mic really cool at the end of his bit, which I thought was really good.
Definitely, I love this one because it's more of like slam poetry in a way, and I loved it so much. And definitely you see more of like why Thomas Jefferson and Hamilton not like why they don't like each other, and like the differences of their beliefs.
Yeah, and a big part of it is just like the financial plans that completely just did not go together at all, because Jefferson had more of an idea of Jeffersonian democracy, which if you've never heard of that, basically Jefferson's idea is that everyone just lives on a farm together,
Mm-hmm.
like different small farms throughout the entire country, and that's just what he wanted. He didn't see any reason for a bigger government than that because he was fully on the opposite side of Britain. Like, he just wanted as far from that as possible. But Hamilton had more of an idea of a national bank and different things like that.
Yeah.
So, just so like just stark differences. So that's the history of that, and that is really shown throughout just how they differ on every single thing in the whole musical. This goes into Take a Break, which yeah, it's getting rough.
Take a Break is Hamilton finally goes on vacation.
Well, he doesn't,
kind of.
but his family wants him to.
His family wants him to go on vacation, but you see, introduce Philip, which is his son. I think in this play he's supposed to be like he turned like 9 years old or something. But anyways, and Eliza's basically like saying like take a break, like come be with your family. You're missing out. You're basically missing out on so much already. Like come back home, let's go on vacation, all that sorts. And also I think in the I didn't read like about like Philip and Hamilton's relationship as in father and son, but like I think at least the musical portrays as Philip just wants to be like his father.
Yeah.
And really looks up to him.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting just the whole thing where he was just going for just still working hard, especially because I know he became a lawyer after the war.
Yeah.
And so he's just still working on that and also just forming the country.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, that leads into Say No to This.
Oh.
This one's a rough one. I did not know the history of Hamilton well enough to know this part, and so I was a little caught off guard with this song.
When my first time watching it, I was like, what's happening? Because I didn't know Peggy died the first time I watched it. So I was like, what is Peggy doing?
Yeah.
That's what I first thought.
My eyes aren't that good. We were sitting far away, so I didn't realize it was the same actress. So I wasn't as horrified. But yeah, so basically, this is when he has an affair, which did happen, with Maria Reynolds, and it led to blackmail and a major scandal, which we'll get into a little bit later. But it's wild. Yeah, it was rough to watch and just to see. It was really sad. And it's just like, what are you doing? But yeah, so it was a song. I didn't love it. I mean, but it's history, so you gotta say it.
Yeah, I don't feel like people like talk about their affairs. So I didn't know very much about it. Which again, that's another song like a
which,
whole.
Incidentally, Hamilton did talk about his affair, which is super interesting. Which we'll get into that.
Yeah,
deep.
That's like a whole nother thing. But no, next song is The Room Where It Happened.
This was good.
Again, Aaron Burr, he knocks it out of the park. Definitely, Burr just wants to be in the room where it happens. He wants to be part of the decisions.
So much FOMO.
Yes, so much. And I don't know if it's this one. And actually, I don't know if this is correct, but I believe there's a song that's like he changes his political views.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it's this one
or the next one, which
it is.
Yeah. So, in the room where it happens, there's kind of the idea of like, which honestly, I want to be in the room where it happens too. The idea of like, don't we all want to be where change is being made? And I just can't imagine being so close, but so far away. Like you're right there where changes are happening, where the country is being built, the country that's we're still living in, and you're just one doorway away from being able to be in there. So that I completely understood that. And then next into Schuyler Defeated, that's when Burr challenges Philip Schuyler, who is Alexander Hamilton's father-in-law, for his Senate seat, and he won.
Yeah.
And so this actually happened, and it deepened tensions between Hamilton and Burr.
He took his time. It
was methodical for sure.
Yeah, he took his time. He found a way. And he got a seat at the table.
Yeah. And that goes into Cabinet Battle 2, which is Jefferson and Hamilton, surprise, surprise, arguing again. And that's supporting France in its revolution. And so Jefferson talks about how we're allies with France and how we need to go and be there for them because they were there for us.
Yeah.
But then Hamilton wants to take a stance of neutrality, which is what America ends up doing. And that was probably for the best because it ended up being with Napoleon, and that was a whole thing for the French. But, yeah, so Washington ended up winning, going with Hamilton's side. And That goes into the next song, which is Washington on Your Side. And that's where Jefferson, Burr, and Madison plot against Hamilton's influence because
Yeah.
he just basically had Washington in his back pocket. And at this time in America,
Which was a flex.
Yeah, Washington was the most powerful person in
Yeah.
America. Everyone loved him, everyone respected him, everyone knew him.
And definitely thinking like society wise, like again, like when Hamilton married Eliza, like that already got his foot in the door, but also adding George Washington, the president of the United States, in that
Yeah.
pocket, like, dang, he got it. He got it all.
Crazy.
But no.
And then one last time, Washington decides to step down, which, if we could just talk for a second about the history of that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That America, just the idea, which that wasn't even in the Constitution yet. That didn't become an amendment until the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea, the peaceful exchange of power is just a fundamental part of what it means to be America.
Yeah.
And that's what's so starkly different about us, especially in this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's 2 songs on this, One Last Time, and then I Know Him, which is King George III mocking Washington's retirement. But it's just crazy that I'm still just baffled that this is a thing, that George Washington stepped down, that he set that precedent of 2 terms.
Yes.
Because without that, I don't know where we would have been. He so easily could have turned into the king of America, George Washington, because everyone loved him. No one was going to ask him to step down. So I just think that just in the historical lens of this is just a crazy part of history.
Yeah, it's just like how you were saying, like stepping down is like it's kind of like a high, like even more respect to him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think the way the song that was portrayed is like, wow, like you did so much, like it was him, like him stepping down, like in retirement. It was like you did, like you deserve this, like go take time off, kind of thing. But no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then next into the Adams administration, which I think this is funny because John Adams isn't in it. And because really John Adams didn't do much in history. And so it's funny they just kind of glance over it and like, oh, well, he was there.
He was there. And it's just a little bit more funny thing. Even with like King George, like he mocks him too. He's like, oh.
Doesn't he say like the short guy or something like that?
Something
He
of the
says
sort.
something funny.
It's like.
But yeah, so that was super, kind of glanced over that. But obviously Hamilton liked to pick fights and he didn't like Adams, and they had like a whole falling out, and that was in real life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Next, this is where stuff really starts getting away from Hamilton. This is when Jefferson, Madison, and Burr confront Hamilton over the alleged financial misconduct. So they think that he was trying to do it for his own financial gain and like fudging the records a little bit. But really what happened was he was just paying off his blackmailer for cheating on his wife with another man's wife.
Yeah.
So this is where they know that he had the affair, and it's crazy. This goes into hurricane, which is just like how he feels at that moment, which obviously it's a rough time. I can't even imagine if you're hiding this for so long, and then finally they're like, oh, you did this thing, which is much worse. And well, to him, it's much worse. Some people would say that the affair was worse, but for him, this was going to go against his entire, like this was going to uproot his entire
career, I thought that was so interesting.
Was
I was like the importance of work and family, his importance in that moment. He chose work over his family.
Absolutely. Which I think he would do 100 more times. I think that's who he was.
And I think Eliza's point of view is like, she wishes that he would change.
Yeah.
But doesn't every woman?
Yeah, which goes right into the Reynolds pamphlet, which, if you don't know, that's what he published, basically telling the world that he cheated on his wife.
Yeah.
Because he'd rather the world know that he cheated on his wife than the world think that he cheated America.
Yeah.
Which on one end is noble, on the other end is like, dude, what are you doing?
There was I remember one of my good friends, this is his very first time seeing Hamilton ever, and he was like, why would he publish it himself? Which I was like, oh, well, at least how I see it is like he published it himself so that because that Burr, Madison, and Jefferson knew about it, he would rather him tell it than someone else tell it for him.
Exactly.
Because I have a hurricane also, like something's about to happen.
Yeah.
It's the quietest.
A little quote from the Reynolds pamphlet, which just kind of sums it all up, is he says, "The bare perusal of the letters from Reynolds and his wife is sufficient to convince my greatest enemy that there is nothing worse in the affair than an irregular and indelicate armor. For this I bow to the just censure which it merits. I have paid pretty severely for the folly and can never recollect it without disgust and self-condemnation. It might seem affectionate to say more. I think it's just crazy that he's like, yeah, I messed up. It's really bad. I can't remember it without being disgusted at myself. But I didn't do anything wrong. Like, when it comes to the books. I just think how hard he holds on to his reputation is just crazy. Because this severely damaged his reputation. But he cared way more about the reputation of his political career than his family.
Yeah, I wonder if he thought it was like even like more of a power move to let him do it himself.
I don't know. I don't think he put a lot of thought. I don't know. There's so many things that go into that. That's just crazy that happened.
No. And then we go into Burn, which, again, such a time, and it's basically just a time in the song just like to sit and you see Eliza's point of view after all this comes out, and she burns all the letters from Hamilton. And basically, she got through a heartbreak. That was definitely a moment in time. But, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously in real life, she actually did destroy a lot of their letters and stuff because she was mad like during that whole time. What my question is, and I couldn't find the answer to this, is whether he told her about the affair himself or if she found out by the Reynolds pamphlet. I sure hope he told her first, just for his sake, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't.
That's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised either if she found out that the rest of the world, like how the rest of the world did.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, she definitely takes herself, like the main song, like I'm taking myself out of the narrative. Like, you will never know how much I loved him. Like, the relationship. That's why she burns the letters. But I had something to say and I forgot it. Brain fart.
Yeah.
It'll come back to me later.
Either way, into Blow Us All Away, just one thing after another. This is when Philip Hamilton, Hamilton's 19-year-old son, dies in a duel.
Which I think that's a crazy name.
Which, yeah.
Blow Us All Away.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just one thing after another, like the affair and then his son dying. Crazy turn of events. And this actually devastated both of the people, like his mom and dad.
Yeah.
And it actually ended up bringing them closer together just because when your son dies, like that's what happens sometimes. But obviously just a terrible thing that happened, that really happened in history. Which is crazy because his son died in a duel defending his father's name.
Yes, and I think, at least in musical sense, that definitely changed the perspective of Hamilton.
Yeah.
Like, throughout the rest of the show.
I mean, you got to think, like, how much you pass down as a father, and whatever you prioritize is what's going to get passed down. And Hamilton clearly prioritized his name above everything else, and that got passed down to his son. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that goes up to its quiet uptown, which is when they grieve and try to reconcile Hamilton and Eliza. And Eliza forgave Hamilton, and they kind of started to rebuild their relationship. So as you can tell, Act 2 focuses a lot more on personal relationship.
Yeah.
But then getting right into it, the election of 1800, it goes right back into the politics of it.
But I think it's the funny way how they enter it, because I think it's like,
right into it.
Well, it's like, can we get back to politics? And like, they're like,
exactly.
Please.
So this one, election of 1800, this was actually in real life a really big election because it was Jefferson and Burr, and basically, I mean, it overplays it a little bit in the musical how much of a say Hamilton had in it, because the musical plays it like Hamilton had the final say in like who won.
Yeah.
But that's not to say he didn't have a big role in it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Hamilton chose Jefferson, who he didn't like, over Burr. And that led to eventually a duel. But I want to read just a little letter that Hamilton wrote as to why he chose Jefferson.
Yeah.
Because I think it puts a lot of context. Hamilton wrote, Mr. Jefferson, though too revolutionary in his notions, is yet a lover of liberty and will be desirous of something like orderly government. Mr. Burr loves nothing but himself, thinks of nothing but his own aggrandizement, and he will be content with nothing short of permanent power in his own hands. No compact that he should make with any other passion in his own breast except his ambition could be relied upon by himself. How then should we be able to rely upon any agreement with him? Mr. Jefferson, I suspect, will not dare much. Mr. Burr will dare everything, in the sanguine hope of effecting everything. Wild. Like, that's not from the musical. That's from real life. Yeah. It's crazy just how much Hamilton was like, I don't like either of them, but at the end of the day, I don't think Jefferson will do anything, and I think Burr will.
Wait.
Like, I don't think Jefferson is going to do anything of importance. I think Burr will do bad things of importance.
Got it. Okay.
And so I think that I just think it's crazy how much he disliked Burr and just didn't trust him in that, and ended up basically winning it for Jefferson.
It's even more of like a heartbreaking friendship too, because even though Burr and Hamilton had definitely big differences in how they approach things, again, Burr, after everything, all they went through, Burr really thought he had it in the bag. Well, not in the bag, but definitely like when it came down to having a tie and like who Hamilton would endorse, like he definitely thought like, Hamilton, my friend, like we went through so much, like please like help me in this.
Yeah.
But then Hamilton chose Jefferson, and it leads to Burr wanting to get revenge.
Yeah, so that goes to Your Obedient Servant, the song, and that's when Burr challenges him to a duel. And obviously, as we can see from the end of Hamilton's life, this actually really happened. Mm-hmm. And that goes right into Best of Wives and Best of Women.
It's just, I think it's just like more of a moment where like Hamilton is having a good memory with his wife.
Yeah.
Before the duel.
Yeah, no one really knows like exactly historically how this happened or what it was like, but I'd like to think that they had a good moment before he died.
Yeah, I hope.
Wow, so this is the end. The world is wide enough. Hamilton-Burr duel, ending Hamilton's life.
Yep.
In real life, Hamilton was mortally wounded on the duel and died the next day. Hamilton wrote down actually that he planned on intentionally missing his first shot against Burr, which is kind of ironic given the entire musical that at the end of the day, he really did throw away his shot.
Dang.
And that's what led to his downfall, was after all that, he threw away his shot, ended up dying. But this is the song where I really was like, wow, is Burr the bad guy? Because Burr talks about how he's like, I'm not going to let my daughter grow up an orphan.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, that really hits. What's going on there?
I think that's also where I feel like is Burr really the villain.
Yeah.
Because I think in the, at least the musical sense, like, I don't think he really wanted to do it. Like,
he did challenge him though.
He did challenge him, but I think in the moment, at least if I were in Burr's shoe, like, yes, like, I want revenge. Like, I did everything to get what I wanted, and I still lost, and it's because of Hamilton.
Yeah.
But I think as soon as he pulled that trigger, regret. Because then, like, the song, like, the world was wide enough for both of them. Yeah. That's basically what the song's saying.
Well, and Aaron Burr is forever in our history books as a villain.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how I was told who he is. He's who is Aaron Burr? He's the guy that shot Hamilton. That's how everyone knows him. That's how everyone will continue to know him. So I think that fact in itself.
I think if they came to the realization, it'd be like, even though, which I think it's like crazy, today's world, which it might be like hard, but like you can have two differences and still grow together and create a better nation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a large part of what our issue is now as a nation, is we're too scared to talk about things, and we're too scared to figure out what the difference is. That's why I think talking about it and finding common ground is so important, because at the end of the day, two people's beliefs aren't as far away as they think they are. Mm-hmm. And so if we actually have conversations about it, we can figure out that you may believe this, I may believe that, but at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. We just have different means of getting there. And I think that was, in large part, all of the founding fathers, though they disagreed on how to get there, they wanted a free country. They wanted a country where America could grow and be the best nation ever. And they just disagreed on how they would get there. So,
no, 100%.
And that goes into Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story. That's the concluding song. Eliza talking about preserving Hamilton's legacy.
But it's not just his legacy. It's everyone's legacy. As in, it's just like a deeper meaning with Eliza, which again, how I said before, like, everyone else is rapping. Everyone's going so fast, like they're running out of time. Eliza's the one that tells everyone's story in the end after everyone's death. Like George Washington's, his best friends, her sisters, and then Hamilton, which deeper meaning into that. You see Eliza sing the song in the very last scene, which I don't know if Asher caught this, but in the very last moment like Hamilton like leads her up to the front of the stage and then she looks up, which people think, and I love to believe this. I adore to believe this because she looks up and she like kind of gasps or like takes a moment for herself because the reason why like people are like, oh, like it's all about Hamilton. Why? I mean, Alexander Hamilton. Why is it just called like Alexander Hamilton? It's called Hamilton because you're also telling Eliza's story. Like she's
Oh,
included in it because she's like telling everyone else's story, but like who will tell her story? The musical tells her story.
interesting.
Like it's
Okay.
not just about Hamilton.
I
Convention.
like it. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm with it. Yeah, so overall, I really enjoyed the show. I thought that obviously the historical accuracy, I mean, we talked about some differences, but it was really
Yeah.
well done. There were minor changes that were made and some liberties that were taken. The most obvious being the love triangle of the sisters. A few
Mm-hmm.
other things that people talk about a lot is mainly his commitment to like the abolitionist movement.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of historians think that it was overdone, especially in Hamilton, and that Hamilton wasn't as much of an abolitionist as the musical portrays.
Mm-hmm.
Many people say that he just wasn't even a little bit focused on the idea of total abolition, even though he did want to end slavery, at least in some parts. Some articles even say that he might have had slaves of his own. His father in law for sure had slaves.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's something that kind of brought up a little bit. But he did start an organization that was anti slavery. So, it definitely wasn't completely unbased,
Yeah.
but it definitely was a little overdone. But also, at the end of the day, in this current climate we're in, a main protagonist that is a slaveholder would not have done well. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that obviously it might be wishful thinking a little bit, but it kind of invigorates people to the idea that this country wasn't founded completely on slaves and slavery,
Yeah.
but one that actually focused on freedom. So, regardless of what Hamilton is slightly inaccurate about, what it does that I'm the most excited about is it gets a new generation of Americans excited about the past and the history that made America into what it is
Mm-hmm.
today. And I know there's so many little boys and girls that watch Hamilton and are so excited for their history classes and so excited to look at the history that made America,
Yeah.
and especially bringing in so many people of color into the narrative. That obviously, I mean, obviously that's the biggest historical
That was
inaccuracy.
crazy. That was like a crazy thing that I witnessed like when watching him. Like, oh, like the diversity on stage is happening, telling like this wonderful, like it's beautiful story. Of course, like either like historical facts, like make sure to fact check everything, like me and Asher are doing right now. But no, it was just like so cool, like to see so many diversity people like taking up these roles and like being proud and like projecting like how they think like someone how they would react. But
Yeah,
no, definitely like creating it into an art form. 'Cause I think definitely I think people have like sorry not to say this but like kind of boring rap on history, like I think they
absolutely.
just
Yeah,
hate on it for no reason sometimes, and I think creating this musical definitely
turned history alive almost.
yeah, and I definitely think like this is a such a creative way to tell history that people don't usually think of. Like I definitely like a musical about history, like who would want to do that?
Yeah,
But
I mean, at the end of the day, Lin-Manuel Miranda called it America Then Told by America Now. And I think
yeah.
that just sums it up really well. It's a story of the founding of America, the founding fathers, and
Mm-hmm.
just personifies them and turns them into real people. And even if it wasn't exactly who they were, it gets us excited to discover that history is made by people just like you and me, people that had emotions, people that had real lives, and people that
Yeah.
had real feelings about things. And if they could, with all of their flaws and all of their
Mm-hmm.
pitfalls, if they could make history and turn America into what it is today, then that means that Zoe, you and I and everyone else can really make history.
Yeah.